Boker Tov, everybody. It's good to see you again. It is Tuesday, April 28th. And as I start today, I am really thinking about my friends and family in the state of Israel. And it's already Wednesday there because of the time difference. And so they are in the process of celebrating what we're going to celebrate tomorrow. But today we're going to talk about one of four modern Jewish observances, all of which take place one right after the other in less than a month's period of time. We started with the first one last week, which was Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and today is the second of the four, and it actually began last night, Monday night, and it goes until sundown tonight. And then tomorrow we have a whole different kind of a celebration. But today is Yom HaZikaron. And even though I mentioned that it's April 28th, the importance of the date is really that it is the fourth of the month of Iyar. So over the last few days, we started a new month. We're now out of the month of Nisan, the month that had Passover in it, and we are moving into the month of Iyar. And when we get to the end of this month and we begin the next month of Sivan, we will celebrate Shavuot. But I want to talk a little bit about Yom HaZikaron. And I want to talk about it from the perspective of some of my own personal experience in having lived in Israel for a year and been there during the entire cycle of holidays for an entire year. When I got to Israel at the end of May of the year 2000, Shavuot had just taken place. And I lived in Israel until almost June of 2001. And so I was able to observe all the holidays, all the celebrations, and all the observances, both ancient and modern. And I think that of everything I experienced there, the fun of Purim, the beauty of Hanukkah, the high holy days, um, that Yom HaZikaron really had an enormous impact on me because I realized that in observing this very sad day, that the state of Israel didn't come about without enormous sacrifice on the part of every Israeli. Not only those who served in the IDF and the Israeli Defense Forces, but of every family who lives there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But let me tell you a little bit about Yom HaZikaron. Zachar, as you probably know, means memory. And when we say Yizkor, we are saying memorial prayers. The official name of the day, and of course we don't call it a holiday because it's not a celebration, it's a memorial, is Yom HaZikaron L'Chayalei Ma'arachot Yisrael Unifge'ei Pe'ulat Ha'eva, which means the day of remembrance for the fallen soldiers of Israel and victims of terrorism. And the year that I lived in Israel was the year when the Second Intifada started. So sadly, during that year, I experienced a number of acts of terrorism, and I think that was one of the other things that affected me so greatly about this observance. It was this commemoration is for all of those who fell in the land of Israel since 1860, when Jews were first allowed to live outside of Jerusalem's old city walls. And even though it wasn't enacted into law until 1963, even before that time, there was conflagration. And so all of the names of the individuals are remembered. So the day begins, as do all Jewish holidays and observances, the night before. So on Monday evening in Israel at 8 o'clock, there is a siren, a 2-minute siren, similar to the one on Yom HaShoah, during which the entire country stops moving. And you see cars pull over on the side of the road, buses stop, taxi cabs stop, people who are walking, people who are riding bikes, everything stops dead in its tracks. People get off the buses, cab drivers step out of their cabs, and everybody is absolutely silent for 2 minutes. It's a really incredibly moving scene. Most people are standing quite still with their heads bowed. And I think that for modern Israel, along with Yom HaShoah, these 2 days represent a significant observance for those who live in Israel, because there isn't anybody there who hasn't been touched by the Holocaust or by those who have died in the wars leading to Israel's independence and existence. Because as we know, the wars just didn't happen prior to 1948, and in 1948 they have happened many, many times since then. So while this particular observance is mostly viewed in a secular way, there is some religious component to it in terms of a special Yizkor prayer that is said, a special Male Rachamim, which is chanted, and in some of the ceremonies that are held. So throughout Israel, there are what are known as a tekes, which is the Hebrew word for, or taksim, which is the Hebrew word for a ceremony. I attended one at a high school that was right near my home in Jerusalem, right near my apartment, known as the Gymnasia, which is a pretty well-known high school. And I just remember the solemnity of the day. And what struck me most was comparing it to how we observe Memorial Day here in the United States, and the many, many distractions that we have here in this country that I believe keep us from truly understanding the gravity of the day, the number of people who have been lost in wars for our freedom, fighting for the United States, and for, regardless of where you stand on various wars that have been fought, we still have to remember the valiant men and women who, braved mortal danger every day, and certainly those in the struggle for the establishment of the State of Israel and the soldiers who fell in those wars. So Memorial Day here in the United States is probably going to be different this year, because we will most likely still be engaging in some form of social distancing. So I don't think we're going to be standing shoulder to shoulder and side by side at Memorial Day parades this year. I don't think we're going to be going to ball games and sitting out in parks in huge crowds watching fireworks and so on. We're not going to be running to the stores for the Memorial Day sales. So maybe the holiday or the observance for us this year will have a little bit more gravity, as it does for those in Israel. There are actually the Memorial Day observance on Yom HaZikaron is actually one of two. There's another one that took place in the month of Adar, which was the month in which Purim fell. It seems like it was eons ago, and it's only 5-6 weeks. And that is noted as a Memorial Day for fallen soldiers whose place of burial is unknown. Like we have the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, they have a special day that was actually fixed by the chief rabbinate as the 7th of Adar. And the reason is that according to Jewish um, thought, Moses was born on the 7th of Adar and died on the 7th of Adar. And of course, nobody knows where Moses is buried. And so that is the day that is traditionally used by the state of Israel to remember and honor those for whom we don't know really where their resting place is. So the day begins the night before at 8 o'clock with a siren. All throughout the day, there are observances that take place at cemeteries all over the land of Israel. The most highly attended of one is most likely the one at Har Herzl, which is the military cemetery in Jerusalem. I have been to Har Herzl not on Yom HaZikaron, but for other occasions, for IDF, Israeli Defense Force ceremonies, and so on. And it's really a remarkable place. I'm going to show you some pictures of what the graves look like there, and it's a very unusual place. As you would expect to have happen on a day that is memorializing those who have lost their lives in battle, there is very little that goes on in Israel other than the memorials. Music and programming on the radio and television are all focused on this particular day. The name of every individual who has either been lost in a terror attack or in a military attack is named. And just so you know, this year that was over 23,800 names. Israelis killed in terror attacks, over 3,000. That has left 4,000, about 5,000 men and women widowed, who have lost their spouses. And, those are people's children as well. And through 2016, there were close to 2,000 orphans who had been left by soldiers and who had died, and folks who had died in terrorist attacks. The thing that I think struck me the most profoundly about this day is that there's nobody in the state of Israel who doesn't know somebody who was killed in a war. And whether that is a young person who may have lost an aunt or an uncle or a parent or a grandparent, or an older person who lost a child. So it is truly a day of national mourning in a way that I haven't experienced before, and that I don't think many of us in this country have, unless we have lost a loved one in battle. So all of the names are read throughout the 24-hour period of time at the on national television, and it is a very, very solemn and grave day. A couple of other things that I want to tell you. Oh, so there is a 1-minute siren at night. I said a 2-minute siren. I was wrong. It's a 1-minute siren at night to begin the 24-hour period of time. And then the following morning, there is a 1-minute siren that marks the beginning of the day. So the first 2 years after the State of Israel was declared, in 1949 and 1950, these memorial services were held on Independence Day, which is the 5th of ER, the 5th of the month of ER, which is tomorrow. So Memorial Day and Independence Day were held simultaneously. And there were some concerns brought to the Ministry of Defense in Israel, saying that the families of these fallen soldiers really wanted to establish a separate Memorial Day that was distinct from all the festive celebrations that are inherent in an Independence Day, particularly in Israel. Like here, we have, huge celebrations. And so in 1951, there was a council that met, and it was finally voted on to have the 4th of ER the day before. So it's very interesting because our Memorial Day falls on the last Monday of the month of May. Excuse me, the 4th Monday of the month of May, because there might be 5 Mondays in May, but it falls on the 4th Monday in the month of May. And then it is over a month later that we have Independence Day. So we kind of miss the relationship between Memorial Day and Independence Day. And even though we think of more modern wars, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the conflicts in Iraq, we know that without having had the original Revolutionary War, we would not be celebrating Independence Day. So the juxtaposition of Yom HaZikaron on the 4th of ER, followed the very next day by Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, is jarring. It really is jarring. In fact, so much so that personally, when Yom HaZikaron ended at night, I was just too down to go and celebrate Independence Day. I could not. It's like a light flip. A light switch is just flipped, and people go from this devastatingly sad observance to this frolicking, exuberant celebration. But I think that that is so typical of how Jews approach life, how we embrace life, is that we do go from mourning, MOURNING, to celebration, because it's the only thing we know to do. We cannot allow ourselves to get so mired in the sadness that we're unable to pull ourselves out. So if I ever have a chance to observe Yom HaZikaron and celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut back to back again in Israel, I will make sure that I really observe Yom HaAtzmaut, which we're going to do tomorrow. So let me see if there's anything else that I can tell you before I show you a few photographs. Just in terms of timing, Israel won't do any of these modern observances, or any other observance for that matter, on Shabbat. So if the 4th of ER should fall on the Sabbath, Yom HaZikaron and Shabbat will not be observed on the same day, because Jewish law prohibits us from observing, from detracting from the joy of Shabbat for anything. We don't have weddings on Shabbat. We don't do baby naming. The only thing we do on Shabbat, because we have to, is a brit milah, a circumcision of a baby boy, on the 8th day of life, because we have to do it on the 8th day of life, no matter what day of the week that is. And in fact, if it falls on Yom Kippur, we even do it on Yom Kippur. So, so that way, if Yom HaZikaron or Independence Day, which follows it the next day, take place on Saturday night, both of them are observed 1 or 2 days earlier, so that they don't conflict with Shabbat. And when the 5th of ER, Yom HaAtzmaut, falls on a Friday or a Saturday, or Saturday night and Sunday, then we reschedule until 1 day later. So it's kind of like some of our own secular holidays. If they fall on a Thursday, we may get the Friday off as the legal holiday, or if they fall on a Tuesday, we may get the Monday off, something like that. So I'm just trying to give you an example of something that is similar. So, because yesterday was the 4th of ER in Israel, I was actually able to find some information about what happened this year in Israel on Yom HaZikaron. Because for the first time ever, it was held without visitors at military cemeteries across the country due to restrictions in place for the coronavirus. And in the past year, there have been 42 people who have been recognized as fallen soldiers, and in addition, another 33 wounded Israel Defense Forces veterans who have died as a result of their injuries. So last night at 8 o'clock, the siren blared, and then a second siren blared Tuesday morning. But there are 52 military cemeteries in Israel. That's a lot of military cemeteries for such a small country. And honor guards stand next to every grave. Torches are lit. Flags are flown at half staff. Every grave gets a flag, a small Israeli flag with a remember ribbon. Flowers, and it is a special kind of a flower, and it is called a dam. I want to get the name right, dam Maccabi, and I'm going to show you a picture of the flower. So this is reminiscent of the poppies that were designated after World War I as the official flower because the poppies were growing in Flanders Field in Belgium after so many soldiers in World War I had been killed there. And the poet in Flanders, who wrote in Flanders Field, wrote about the beautiful red poppies. So these are the flowers. This is a photograph of them actually closed. But when they open up, they're just gorgeous. I couldn't find a picture of them open, but this is what they look like closed. This is a photograph of what Har Herzl looks like. Mount Herzl, which is the main military cemetery, and you could see that the graves are above ground, and each one of them looks like a bed with a headstone resting almost like a pillow. And there are just sadly rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of these at Har Herzl and at other cemeteries. This is a photograph of a young Israeli soldier, a woman, placing the flags next to each grave. Each grave during the day has a currently serving Israeli soldier standing there in honor. This needs no introduction. Obviously, a young man who lost somebody very close to him. And by the way, these little boxes that you see here are for a yahrzeit candle, so that when a family is actually observing the yahrzeit of a loved one who they have lost, they put the candle into that it has a little opening on the other side, and they can put the candle in there in memory of their loved one. And finally, this picture, which just moved me so much, of this little boy lying on top of one of the graves. And of course, without being able to see any inscription, with a date, I can't tell whether this was for a parent, a grandparent, a uncle, a grandfather, a cousin. It could have been really for anyone. But this is what I mean when I say that there's really nobody in Israel who hasn't lost somebody. And so it's felt so much more deeply It's estimated that about 1.5 million people participate in or attend a memorial service on that day. And by that I mean a, a planned service, a service that's done at a cemetery or by a particular organization or something of that nature. 1.5 million people out of 8.8 million people, I did the math, is about 17%. That would be the equivalent of about 55.5 million citizens of the United States attending one of these services. And so you can see that this is real and serious stuff in the land of Israel. So I want to read a couple of things to you that are appropriate for this day. And then I'm going to end by playing a siren and then a piece of music that is traditional to be listened to on the day of Yom HaZikaron. A poem by Natan Alterman. The earth grows still, the lurid sky slowly pales over smoking borders. Heartsick but still living, a people stand by to greet the uniqueness of a miracle. Readied, they wait beneath the moon, wrapped in awesome joy before the light. A girl and boy step forward and slowly walk from the waiting nation. In work garb and heavy shod, they climb in stillness, wearing yet the dress of battle, the grime of aching day and fire-filled night. Unwashed, weary unto death, not knowing rest, but wearing youth like dewdrops in their hair. Silently, the two approach and stand. Are they of the quick or of the dead? Through wandering tears the people stare. Who are you, the silent two? And the reply, we are the silver platter upon which the Jewish state was served to you. And in speaking, fall in shadow at the nation's feet. Let the rest in Israel's chronicles be told. So, thinking about these two young people who represent all of the youth that were killed in the state of Israel, because it's always the young, or mostly the young, who die in battle. And they are calling themselves the silver platter upon which Israel sacrificed their youth. There is, of course, a special El Malei Rachamim, which is chanted on that day. And I'm going to read you the translation. Fully compassionate God on high, to the souls of those among our people who bravely gave their lives for the redemption of our land, grant clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and the pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the embrace of your wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, they are yours. They will rest in peace. And I want to play you a portion of the siren blast. And then traditionally, it is Unatana Tokef that is played. We say Unatana Tokef at on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and it's also traditionally sung at this time. Unatana Tokef.
ובוא תנסה מלכותך, ויקום בחסד כסאך, ותשב עליו באמת, ותשב עליו באמת. אמת כי אתה הוא דיין ומוכיח ויודע בעת, וכותב וחותם וסופר ומונה, ותזכור כל הנשכחות, ותפתח ספר הזיכרונות, ומאליו יקרא וחותם יד כל אדם בו, ובשופר גדול ייתקע, וכל דממה דקה יישמע.
Lahitraot, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. I hope that you will take a moment today just to reflect on Israel's sacrifice, the loss of life, primarily of young people. And tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, we'll be back to celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel Independence Day, a much happier modern holiday. Lahitraot. I'll see you tomorrow morning at the same time. Bye-bye.